Thank you, Governor Tuan, Tom, and all of you for allowing me to come here and talk today. And I want to pay a special tribute to Ambassador Fujisaki, who was one of the finest ambassadors and diplomats in Washington in his time. He had terrific outreach to the Washington community, was involved in many issues. It's no surprise to me that he's involved in this, and I'm thrilled to see his voice and to hear him again talking about such an important issue. He also threw the best dinner parties ever to happen in Washington, bringing in some of the wonderful chefs from Japan, and it was a thrill to have him in Washington, and we miss him. So thank you, Ambassador Fujisaki. Now, I applaud the efforts of the Boston Global Forum to develop these standards in the Code of Conduct for Cyber Peace and Security. I'm speaking today as a journalist of 40 years with ABC News, and someone who has been sort of in the forefront of trying to struggle with issues of coverage and the way forward in this digital age. I was the Washington Bureau Chief for 20 years, and I stepped aside last year to work on special political projects and our external relations in Washington. But having taken a bureau from typewriters to Twitter and having dealt with the issues of journalism, I can agree that you can't, the future is what's important here. We don't learn the lessons. We have a lot of lessons from the past and from history, but we are constantly surprised and trying to anticipate what this future in the digital age brings and what are the right norms, the right standards, the right ethics as we move forward. And the code does properly address recommended behaviors for citizens, the policymakers, businesses, engineers, and the like. But as a sort of parallel consideration and something that's very important, it's a slice of this. It would be timely to also look at how some of these issues affect journalism, and maybe it's time to establish some basic guidelines for journalists internationally, for those struggling still to speak truth to power around the world. Many nations don't share our own press freedom, but even U.S. press freedoms have faced challenges in the digital world, and these challenges continue to need addressing. Setting standards in this country, I think, can again show us as leaders to the rest of the world in press freedom and help maybe show other nations the way forward. Many journalism organizations are looking already at these issues. The protection of confidential sources in a digital age has been a big struggle in the U.S., and cases like James Risen and many other cases of reporters who face jail time bring the issue to the forefront, but it's also something that has some specific issues that are raised by the digital age. And after it was revealed, I think it was 2 years ago, that the government had secretly collected phone records of reporters and editors of the Associated Press, we had a series of high-level meetings between the Attorney General and journalists, some high-level, long-time journalists. These meetings are still going on. We are trying to rewrite decades-old standards and policies, first established in an analog era, and that process continues today, but it's incredibly challenging. Edward Snowden's leaked documents about government surveillance, the hacked Sony emails that were released to the media, and other stories like that continue to highlight the need to establish what are our norms. The best reporters are only as good as their sources, and if people fear talking to or communicating digitally with a reporter in this digital age, then the information will stop flowing freely. It's a different issue than overall internet information and freedom, but it is an important issue to journalism. And if you believe, as I do, that a free press is part of the firm foundation of good government, then you must commit to protecting journalists as they do their jobs. People working within our own political and corporate power structure must feel confident that if they blow the whistle on corruption, they will not be victimized. The biggest stories in our memories, stories like Watergate, Vietnam, Pentagon Papers, NSA spying, and the like, stories that arguably changed the course of history in our country, all started with sources from within the power structure who felt their voices would not be heard without the help of journalists. And here are some threats to that process and a free press in the digital age. There's increased surveillance and monitoring of communications by governments and corporations. Emails and internet messages are easily accessed. In the legitimate and very necessary fight against global terrorism, there's data collection and retention, including emails and phone calls by the government. We need protection from using this capability against journalists doing their jobs. Our devices that we all carry around, and that, I have to panic if I even leave it at home for one day or 1 hour. They are so easy to use now and so helpful to us in our jobs, even allow us to broadcast from our phones. But we can be tracked by hackers, corporations, governments. They can find out where we are at any given time, who we're talking to. And that's something that many journalists have become very complacent in using those devices. There's less public respect for privacy than ever before, and there are fragile legal safeguards because of outdated laws. UNESCO and many other journalist organizations are looking at making recommendations on these issues, and maybe it's something to also consider. Already there are studies that show reporters are more reluctant now than they used to be to undertake very big level news investigations that may lead to battles over source protection. Also in the digital age, many news organizations are facing severe budget crises, and these battles are very expensive. Journalists really need to take it upon ourselves to be better trained in digital security, handling confidential information in digitally secure ways. The efficiency, again, of using our devices makes us too complacent about these security issues, and best practices need to be established. Also, the public needs to take this issue more seriously, and our own sources. Everyone needs to be more aware of cybersecurity. The government should adopt, update, and strengthen source protection and shield laws, and these laws need to be more realistic in the digital age. Active journalism should be shielded from targeted surveillance, data retention, and other efforts aimed at revealing confidential sources. And we all think that exceptions to this rule, and there have to be exceptions, I understand, should be very narrow so that the norm is source protection. Journalists need to work together to develop digital age standards on privacy and what can and should be made public when we are handed hacked and then leaked materials. And in the case of the Sony emails, it was a very interesting ethics and standards situation for us, because out come these emails with and information published anonymously on sites. Shocking information, startling information, definitely news by anyone's judgment of what is news. But Sony demanded that media outlets stop reporting on those leaked emails and stolen documents. They were hacked. They called the material stolen information, and they threatened legal action. And by the time we were able to sort of process, yes, actually, very damaging and very embarrassing material have been made public. These celebrity email addresses, racist remarks by executives, gossip, and some business news, all obtained by cyber attack. That caused us at ABC to thoroughly review. We did not, eventually, we characterized some of the material that was out there, but we did not publish them. We do not set the standard, anybody else's standards but our own, and obviously that material got out there. Aaron Sorkin, in an op-ed on this situation, said that reporters writing about that kind of leaked document, and those leaked documents specifically, were, quote, morally treasonous and spectacularly dishonest. They were trafficking in stolen goods. These are just some of the issues that are raised by the digital age and by cybersecurity. And they need public scrutiny and common interest best practice established. I think that there's some must-dos for journalists. We must educate ourselves about the critical issues involved in cybersecurity. There are very few journalists, it's not who are real experts and who have big audiences. We need to do our part to bring these issues more to the public. That is a must-do for journalists. We must actually prepare ourselves to be able to effectively communicate to the public. When incidents occur, we need digital literacy and situational awareness that I would say most mainstream journalists still are lacking. We need to technically prepare better. We prepare internally our own email communications, but I don't think we're technically prepared for a lot of different scenarios and how we communicate to the public when the country is under attack, depending whether it's financial institutions, military issues or whatever. We need to run those tabletop exercises for ourselves, and we must work toward establishing the standards that protect the privacy and civil liberties of others as well as those of journalists. So thank you. I appreciate the time.